It's Fill Your Plate Now, where every bite brings you closer to the farm gate and further from what's unhealthy. Now here's your hosts, Julie and Tammy, helping you live well by filling your plate well.
You know, we are so blessed, Julie, to live in an area where we have such an abundance of fruits and vegetables and sunshine 300 days plus a year. I mean, there are so many different types of agriculture here in Arizona, and yet because it's on the outskirts of town for the most part, we don't see it day to day.
Right.
But having so much sunshine seems to be conducive to having a lot of different types of, especially fruits and vegetables. I mean, you grew up on a farm. What is your experience?
So it's fun that you should say that. And we had decided we'd talk a little bit about climate, Arizona's climate, and it's truly the climate that makes agriculture in Arizona happen. And I always like to quote Stephanie Smallhouse. She said one time, it's not just, we don't farm in the desert despite it. We farm in the desert because of it. Those 300 plus days of sunshine support agriculture and an amazing abundance of agriculture and a diversity of it. And I can even recall this growing up on the farm. So the busy time in the summer for us as kids, and I'm relating it to us as kids, was pretty intense because we did have kind of it wasn't a 9 to 5. We got up and out by 5 and we'd work until 1 to get our 8 hours in. But, you know, that was when we earned a paycheck and all that fun stuff. But because we have those 300 plus days of sunshine, the winters, especially for Dad and the farm team, they could be working just as hard and busy. And so that's truly a representation of that 300 plus days of sunshine. If I was in the Midwest, yes, I'd still be taking care of my animals and stuff, but a lot of my crops I'm not growing. So that crop production in the Midwest with heavy snows. Now, there's exceptions to that rule, and certainly if you have hooped greenhouses, you can farm in the winter in the Midwest. But because we have so much sunshine, and that's critical because research tells us that beyond sunshine, Arizona supports agriculture through those seasonal rains and very mild winters. And that's why you can shift all of your vegetable production from California to Arizona in the winter. And hence the reason Yuma is called the winter capital of the nation. So that's that 300 plus days of sunshine, and it truly is an amazing experience. And for us, growing up on the farm, and then when my older brother and I partnered with Mom and Dad on the farm, we didn't feel like there was ever downtime. It was almost 365 days out of the year. And I know your dairies farmers can say the same thing. In fact, I have a question for you about that too as we go along. But when you talk to our weather people and those climatologists that really know about climate, they say that Arizona is in a semi-arid climate. So in some senses, it's a little bit, it's full of sunshine. And we don't have these dramatic weather or intense weather things. Now, yes, you and I might think that the monsoons are significant weather because we usually have those starting mid-July and going into August, but it's nothing compared to what some of the weather that they're dealing with in the Midwest.
Yeah, I know. And, you know, people look at Arizona and think desert, but actually there is an abundance of agriculture here. But give me some examples of different types of crops that would be grown during different types of the year, times of the year, because you look at summer and you think nothing's going to grow in the summer.
Right. But well, one of our best a couple of our crops that really like heat, especially cotton, it actually thrives in the heat. So it depends on where you're growing it. If you're growing it in Yuma, they're planting, I want to say as early, I think, as the first part of March, about a month or 30 to 40 days earlier than our cotton farmers in the valley who probably don't begin to plant until the first part of April. So there's even a shift. We have a lot of these different little microclimates, and you might wonder, well, why does Yuma plant their cotton so early? It's because they've got such a diverse grouping of plantings later on in the season. They want to get that cotton out of there early so that they can start with their fruits and vegetables, or the leafy greens, basically. And so in the when I always say in the valley, Maricopa County, Pinal County, Graham County, so they're going to plant their cotton a little bit later, but then that cotton season goes all the way through the summer. And you know, we can identify with hot, brutal sun beating down on us in the middle of the summer. Well, as long as they have the appropriate amount of water, cotton actually has some of its most robust growing periods in the bright sunlight heat of an Arizona sky. And then we harvest in the fall. Pretty much, it kind of depends on the cotton farmer and when he planted, but if I recall correctly, and my farmers will definitely give me a call later when they listen to this episode, but I'm pretty sure that they start harvesting first part of November and into December.
The cotton.
The cotton. So it's also a long growing season crop, but there's that period where some of its most robust growth is taking place in the heat of the summer, again, as long as it has enough water.
And then what typically would be grown after the cotton is harvested?
So a lot of our farmers, again, in the valley will build in or plant their winter wheat. And that's one of those nitrogen fixing crops, and that's why they like to plant it in between some of their other crops. Or depending on their rotation, because our farmers are very committed to healthy soil and rotation and all that things, they're going to be planting different crops. But they might also rotate with alfalfa. And then the story behind alfalfa, and it can thrive, are mild winters that average about 65 degrees. I just love the winter. The fall and the winter so much more in Arizona than the summer, but our crops are a little bit different. So you can be harvesting alfalfa all year round. Because of our mild weather in the winter, we basically are having anywhere from 8 to 9 cuttings of alfalfa, and you can't get that in the Midwest. You might be lucky if you get 3 cuttings, possibly 4 cuttings, and when we say cuttings, that's the harvest. So in a cycle of a alfalfa plant's life, we'll be chopping it kind of like having a haircut more than once in a given year, and in Arizona, it's anywhere from 8 to 9 times.
Wow. And then is there another crop in between alfalfa and going back to cotton, or does it go right back to cotton?
A lot of times it will go back to cotton, but the other thing with alfalfa, we can have it in the soil. It's another, I believe the word phrasing they use is nitrogen fixing crop. It can be in that field for anywhere from 4 to 5 years. So, and because it's a legume, it's really good for the soil. And so you can get a lot of productivity out of that. But there's other small grains that they might be growing. You've got the cotton. Sometimes we're experimenting with other crops that aren't as well known, with the exception of some other people like the waiuli. That's another crop that once you get it started, the waiuli thrives really well in our summer heat. It can handle the heat, and it's a low water use crop. In fact, it uses a lot less water than cotton. So people a lot of our farmers and some of our other organizations are experimenting with that crop.
And so what is that used for?
So a variety of things. When they were first experimenting, it basically produces a natural latex. And when they were first experimenting with it, they were even checking, it's more of a natural latex, so the medical community liked the idea because some of our medical people are allergic to rubber latex from a traditional rubber tree. And of course, then you're not depending on another country accessing their rubber through the rubber tree. But now there's, I think it's Bridgestone is the company that's working with some of our farmers here in Arizona to make tires. So there's potential with the Waiuli. There's still a little bit more experimentation to go, but proof of the pudding, going back to our climate, as a crop, and because it's low water use, then it's something to consider. And Waiuli definitely grows well here in Arizona. Another low water use crop that thrives in our climates, we have 3 different regions. Up north, kind of mid-range, and then in the south is our wine grapes. Some of our cotton farmers that used to grow cotton, and they're in the Cochise County, Wilcox area, they discovered, okay, we can grow wine grapes, and they use less water. Most of our wine grape acreage is on drip systems, so it's very targeted, very specific, and we grow amazing wine grapes here in the state of Arizona.
And that's in a little higher altitude, isn't it?
Well, it depends. We have some of the grapes that are in the higher altitude, and Cochise County is actually a little bit higher elevation than you and I here in the valley, but not by too much.
Oh.
But because of these different microclimates and just the elevation, that influences the variety of grape that they grow. And we're growing some very interesting, some varieties that come from Spain. Don't ask me to pronounce them because I won't get it right. But some varietals from Spain and just some other areas. And we've discovered that we're really good with our blends and some of those kind of different / unique varieties.
Now, since we have such a nice climate all year round, well, some people wouldn't describe the summer as nice, but
right.
Sunshine all year round.
Right.
We can grow all kinds of different crops. And you mentioned something about the soil and correcting the soil. So growing the variety of crops, does that help to keep the soil healthy?
That's part of it. It's not singularly it, but it's part of it. It's that rotation. And certain crops will contribute different nutrients to it. We also have things that we can experiment with today, that we have opportunities with some of the organic matter that's being used and put back into the soil. So there's a variety of things that our farmers are doing today to make sure that the soil, and that you combine good soil, good seed, and our Arizona sun, and just like former president of Arizona Farm Bureau, Stephanie Smallhouse said, it's not despite living in the desert that we farm, it's because we live in the desert. And Dr. Silvertooth, one of our University of Arizona professors, he said, we have good soil out here. All of those alluvial soils that were brought millennial ago, over the decades, over the centuries, were deposited by rivers. So a lot of our soil here in Arizona, we have the potential to do a lot of very amazing things with it, including growing amazing crops. But we couldn't do it without this climate. I think I've said this before, and people will hear me say it again. A lot of what we do here with agriculture, you can't lift that and transport it to the Midwest because they don't have that 300 plus days of sunshine. And that's why the climate is so interesting. But I have a question for you about dairy. So our summers are pretty brutal. We have air conditioning, so we can get in and out of the sun. So how do our dairy farmers take care of the cows in the hottest days of the summer here in Arizona?
Well, the dairy cows do have shade structures.
Right.
So in the mild climate, if they want to be out in the sun, they can. And if they want in the shade, they've got shade structures. So they can get out of the sun when they want to. But in the hotter months, there are misters and also fans. Mm-hmm. And there are temperature mechanisms that let the farmers know what the temperature is under these awnings where the fans and the misters are. And oftentimes it's 30 degrees or more out in the sun than it is under the awnings. Yeah, it can drop the temperature around 30 degrees or more when you have those fans and misters on. So that does help to really keep the cows cool in that really tough weather.
Yeah. And I have a story to tell about that, because obviously growing up on a farm but not a dairy farm, and I was working with a photographer, and I had talked a couple of our dairy farmers into letting us come onto the farm and take a variety of pictures. And the farmer invited us to go into that area where the misters were on and the fans were going. And in that case, I want to recall that they were even back behind these plastic flaps, kind of. And I went in there, and after a while, I was cold. And yet, to your point, the minute I stepped outside of that shaded area, I warmed up because I had gotten a little bit too cold. But the ladies loved it, and they were cool, and they were chewing their cud, as we say, and getting ready for the next milking, I guess. It was fun.
And the farmers, I mean, they want to make sure their cows are taken care of. So
Right.
that's one way they can keep them comfortable, and they have plenty of water that they can access. So keeping them comfortable, making sure they have plenty of water to access, having those fans and misters to cool that temperature down, that really helps them through those hotter times of the year.
One thing that strikes me, too, when I go to the dairy farms, they really care about what they do, and they really care about their animals. And they're constantly checking. I remember the Ging Dairy out in the Buckeye area. They're always looking at other opportunities with technology to make every improvement that they can possibly make for the health and the care of their dairy cows.
Absolutely. They're always looking for ways to help make sure that the cows are well taken care of, and technology has played a huge role. It's gotten so precise that they can, they immediately know what the temperature is under the awnings when the fans and the misters are on. They have things that can check that. They have what I call a Fitbit for the ear for the cow. So when the cow is walking around, they can see how many steps it's taking. And if it's not walking around as much as it normally does, then that's a sign that they need to check on that animal or other animals that are not walking around as much as they normally do, because they may be starting to get sick. So they can treat them before they really would get sick, or see if there's something else that's bothering them that's causing them to not.
And the other thing
same
about
pace.
dairy cows is they have a nutritionist.
They do. I'm so jealous. I mean, they have their own personal nutritionist that comes in, and for different times in the life cycle, they put together different feeds that's appropriate for that particular animal. So they work with the climate and try to make sure there's options for the cows to stay comfortable in those hot summer months.
So what strikes me about this and the conversation on climate alone, I mean, there's so many things that we could talk about with agriculture here in the state of Arizona, but climate works to our benefit with all of our agriculture, whether that's animal agriculture or crop agriculture. And that 300 plus days of sunshine means that we're in production year round. I like another thing I've heard a colleague of mine say one time is we're planting and harvesting 12 months out of the year.
Yeah, that sunshine really allows us to have a booming agricultural industry here in Arizona. And I know Yuma in particular is very well known for all of the agriculture, particularly lettuce. What is the season for lettuce?
So they normally will start harvesting probably mid to late November, and they're harvesting through March. They've probably been planting, though, prior and getting ready for the season as early as September and October. And they're even doing transplants because they discovered that if you start a transplant, a vegetable transplant, say, for example, broccoli, in the greenhouse, and you're using less water, so you do the transplant. So that's probably occurring as early as, I believe, September, certainly October. And then the whole process in terms of the harvesting, when production really is kicking in, that harvest crews coming out, they have so many advantages based on where they're at, that's one of the reasons that we have the robust abundance of the vegetables, fruits and vegetables that we have, especially in the winter. So I celebrate the 300 plus days of sunshine here in Arizona, and always appreciate what our farmers do, even in the peak heat, with our animals to take care of them and keep them healthy.
They do what they can to adapt to every part of the year, that's for sure.
Well, I'm excited about some of the other things that we're going to cover, that farm gate to plate. And Tammy, I'm having a ball doing this.
I think this has been great fun.